As I sat down with today's speaker, I was struck again by this unbelievable joy in connecting with people who are not just operating on a similar level, on a similar, let's say, series of philosophies, but where this desire to really talk about the themes that are pertinent to human development, pertinent to societal development, pertinent to how we forge deeper body-mind connection, that we're in such a similar place. Hadrian Stiff is an exceptional human. He is the founder of Elite Squash, which is an internationally recognized coaching organization that supports pro athletes, particularly in the domain of squash. Although, as we're going to talk about, his expertise ranges much wider than that. Hadrian, the first thing I want to do is just thank you so much for being with us. I'm so excited to have this conversation and give you a chance to introduce yourself to the audience, and then we're going to dive into some of the questions that we've got lined up for today.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that lovely introduction. Already quite emotional now. So hello everyone. Yeah, I'm Hadrian, as Anthea's explained, and I've been involved in squash for nearly my whole life, pretty much my whole life since the age of 4. It's been the sport that I was kind of born into, and it was the environment that I grew up in. And it became the sport that I focused on primarily from around 16 years old after going through school and playing a bunch of other sports, but was generally a sporty kid with a sporty dad. And that kind of became my pathway and I guess my identity from quite a young age. So then as I moved through squash, I was successful as a young player, became #1 in the country, and I captained England. And then I went to play professionally in my 20s, traveled the world, saw some amazing things, had some amazing experiences, played many competitions. I got to number 52 in the world as a professional player. And then as that career evolved through, I was coaching actually from 16 years old. So I was coaching from relatively young, mainly to fund my squash, struggling squash journey. And knew quite early on that I did enjoy the process of teaching, and that it was definitely something which in the early stages gave me a sense of purpose, but I hadn't really grabbed it at that point to how I did further down the line. But basically, as my career unfolded and it wound down in my kind of early 30s, I then made the definitive decision, right, I'm going to switch into coaching. It was possibly school teaching, and then I was a sort of 50-50 decision. And I had a sort of a moment one day, and I thought, right, I love the process of teaching, but I'm not great at being told what to do. I really like freedom to do it my way and be quite creative in how I coach and communicate. And I just felt that the schooling system might be too confined for me, working to a curriculum and so on. And I just thought I want to write my own curriculum and create my own thing. So, and I basically continued to build Elite Squash, which has already existed at that point through summer camps and things. And then I said through my whole focus into that really. And initially it was building juniors, and we had a lot of success with young players, and then came professionals following that. And we'll go on to talk about, I'm sure, the different professionals that I've worked with, because they're just such interesting individuals, regardless of whether you're playing sport or not. They're just fascinating people because they're unique in how they've achieved their goals. So yeah, that led me through coaching. I'm now 52 and father of 3, and I'm living in New York, and I'm kind of going, how did I get here? But yeah, it's all good.
If I had a penny for the number of times I look at my life and say, oh, how did I find myself here?
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
I was talking to someone last night about this tendency with time where you sit in a particular space for maybe like a year or 2 years, and you're sort of thinking, oh, not much is happening. I'm quite settled. I wonder when something is going to come, and then boom.
Mm.
And then you have to pivot. And it's not dissimilar to the sport, right? You have to pivot so quick. And I always wonder whether it requires a particular kind of temperament to be able to do that sort of self-claiming pivot, but also whether we perhaps encourage it based on the sorts of temperaments and the openness levels that we have.
Yes, I think that's a really, really interesting point. And for sure, in sport, pivoting within a competitive environment, within a squash environment, within a rally, within a game and a match is is critical, and the very best are very clever and so present in those moments that they're able to see when and how to do that because of the way they've trained and the way they've developed themselves. But you're absolutely right. Of course, it's happening all the time in our lives. And one of the kind of obvious ones, I guess, was COVID, wasn't it? Where suddenly it's like, okay, here we are. Now, how am I going to make a living, and how are we going to stay mentally free and healthy? And what are we going to do here? And I can remember so clearly making certain choices and doing certain things during that period, and being aware that it felt the same kind of psychological and emotional experience as I had as a squash player. I felt this kind of competitive, creative, right, I'm going to make this awesome, even though it doesn't look great. And I felt myself doing that, which was quite an interesting experience, and kind of led on to a bunch of other stuff at the time. But yeah, you're so right. We get presented with these moments, and how we choose really can define, our lives, essentially.
I want to pick up on that point with two sub-points. The second one, we're going to talk about. The first one is more of an interest in you and what you've learned working with some of the world number ones in your field. I watched a video of yours on your YouTube channel a couple of nights ago, and the video was outlining the necessity of being light of foot. And it was gorgeous because obviously, as I was watching you with the background that I have in physiology, as I was watching you, I could really see what you were cultivating, which was this kind of springy adaptability, which is also psychologically what we're talking about. But it goes so much deeper than the physiology of being adept and adroit at that. It is to do with a human being's capacity to, as you say, be so present in their body-mind vessel that they are not just aware of everything coming up inside of them, but they're so aware of the field and the space around them that there is this quality of both like achievement orientation, which you're talking about, and the quality of surrender, like feeling into the flow, feeling into what is being presented that you need to adapt yourself to. And it's interesting that that video is coming to my mind as I listen to you talking about, okay, it was in COVID and I suddenly realized that there was an opportunity and that I was deciding consciously, how do I make this good? How do I make something of this? Do you think you've always had that as a temperamental leaning? I am going to make something that is good here.
I do. Yeah, I think that's a great question as well. It's funny, yeah, like you say, you find yourself at a certain period of life and kind of go, how did I get here? And I think you have a similar experience with your kind of character development and emotional development, and then find yourself doing certain things at certain times and thinking, where did I get that from? Was that from experiences, or was it from my parents? Or, obviously we gather together all these pieces, and there are some that I sense that probably come from my dad, and particularly watching how he moved on a squash court, but also how he operated in the world and how he still does navigate things. But I definitely, I know for sure I've always had a very clear picture of what I wanted from certain situations. And I think I've been quite good at seeing that picture in a very clear image as well. From, for example, developing my junior squash career and seeing where that could go and how I wanted to go there, but also being able to visualize lightness on a court, being able to visualize what the experience is like to do the thing that I want to try to get to, all the way through to much more so in the present day, like the absolute clarity of, just briefly to go back to COVID, I had two pieces there that came through loud and clear. One was fear, and the other was freedom. And I kind of sat with that for pretty much the whole period, which, I know it was awful for many people, but also there was an enforced pause on the world and a lot of time to reflect because there wasn't much to do, of course. And I kept going back and forth, like, why are these two pieces so critical to me? And it helped to carve out, well, I want to be able to remove this fear because it's just really annoying. I find it very, I kind of aggressively go and pursue things which help me, therefore help others to understand better and work with, and in some cases eradicate fear in order to release potential, combined with the fact that, you know, that requires a freedom. So what I'm kind of going with that is that sort of clarity of, I guess, senses in me of what I intuitively know to be fulfilled and great and vibrant, and that's a good life and that's positive, which I think has come to some extent from my parents' life. But just knowing that I definitely don't want to feel like that, live like that, and experience squash in this way or whatever on the other side. I really do want it to be full of freedom and joy and creativity and passion and so on. So I think the ability to pivot and to make decisions and to be able to be courageous in those moments, I really do believe is very much decided on the power and clarity and commitment to the picture of what you're trying to, where you're going, you know, what do you actually want? You know, whether that be in a squash career, whether it be in parenthood or a relationship or a physical state, really, what do you want? And to some extent, you know, or to a larger extent, also like, why do you want that? But what is it? What is it going to give you? What's the emotion? And then start to understand, okay, well, how do we organize things? And then how do we basically change our state, our characters, our emotional patterns, our behaviors, our limiting beliefs? How do we evolve all of that to get to this amazing thing that's here? And that is definitely one of the things which was so prevalent in those world number one players and Muhammad world number one players, that the picture was there from 9 years old. It wasn't number one in the world. It wasn't world champion. It was to make history in the sport at 9. And that never changed. So from 9 to where he is now at 34, like, you know, okay, he's sort of dropping down the rankings a little bit, still in the top 10, but from the moment that that vision was created until it came to life, which it did, and he dominated the sport for 50 months, world champion, world number one, obviously, won every title that's going. That picture was in the frame, and he watched all the Rocky films, he read all the books, he just immersed himself with heroes and just thought nothing else, felt nothing else, surrounded himself with heroes, surrounded himself with people who aligned with that, and just kept going. And then his mother helped shape that journey, and then people and so on. And, you know, you hear these patterns in every successful person, but always at the beginning, there is this extremely powerful, exciting, challenging, intense picture that they can not just see, but feel. And I think it's that energy, that initial energy that's there, that then fuels the ability to be like, right, okay, well, this is coming, I need to do that. And if this is there, then because you've got a belief that you can move through. And I think when I come across people that really struggle to pivot and change and navigate difficulty, a lot of the time it's because they don't really know what's the other side of it, or what they want to be the other side of that anyway. So yeah, it's fascinating. Obviously, there's so many strands that come off that, but
So interesting. And you know, you have me reflecting, and I will ask you this in a minute, what it's like for you to try and coach people that are not in possession of that
mm,
deep dream.
mm,
So much of what you're describing requires self-prioritization,
mm,
a deep neurobiological feeling of safety in that vision,
mm,
maybe some of the bread and butter early developmental experiences that will really cultivate someone's deeper self-worth, and then knowing of that innate capacity that they have.
mm,
I also, as I'm listening to you, just can't help myself thinking about the neuroscience of what you're describing, that fundamentally every single person has the capacity to do this, to
mm,
feel into a vision that is, as you say, emotionally resonant and relevant,
mm,
and then to keep generating more body mind signals, more body mind depth of experience of that thing. And then, of course, the external materiality, you just decide, how do I do these things to create this?
mm, mm.
In some ways,
Absolutely.
it's very logical, that
Mm,
process. I think, as you say, where people get tripped up is either they're not willing to give themselves the pleasure and the entitlement of sitting down to consider the dream,
yeah.
or they try to do that, but they lack a belief in their innate capacity to achieve the dream. And I see this a lot, they get so wrapped up in their perception of the needs of others or what they've been given permission to do by their family members or society or their obligations as a parent that they muddy the actions. And in muddying the actions, then you just have a sort of a paella of things that doesn't really lead you to that one goal because hyper focus is required. One of the questions that we had together, which is so relevant to this theme, was just this question of like, really, what does success actually mean? We've got the metrics, and for all of the players that you're talking about, these world number ones, these global champions, their metric of success might either be an external award, or it might be, as you say, getting to a certain level of ranking by a certain age, or it sounds like in the case of Mohammed, having an identity and a reputation and a personal brand that is so dominating that it completely defines the sport. And in the process of that, I imagine that reinforces what he already believes about himself, but it makes it much more externally verified. What's your take on success? What that means?
I think about that a lot. And being in the US actually has really brought that to the surface. I actually did a talk recently at a location here about success and about winning in the kind of context of squash, but it was around an audience of a mixture of different people. I found myself realizing that it was a relatively difficult subject in this country. I had to think about it differently compared to even how I would in the UK. And if I go, I've just been in China doing some coaching there, and even there, it's different again. But how success, winning, losing, passing, failing is viewed here, it's extremely powerful. Like winning is everything. Winning is just everywhere. Winning is a conversation. Like, am I going to win this? Who's going to come out on top with, the best jobs they're doing, or, the recent person they beat in this tennis match, or, everything is really fueled by this idea of everyone trying to climb to this metaphorical top. And I guess, anyone that's been to the US will know that. Maybe it's also a bit more prevalent because I'm in New York, so it's really the melting pot of high performing in all sorts of different areas. But I'm kind of slammed in the face by how much that's driving everything. And I'm working here with young squash players in the high performance category, essentially trying to get to the top of their age groups so that they can then go to college. And if they get to college, they then get the great jobs, and if they get great jobs, then life is perfect. So there's this whole pipeline that I'm involved in here. So then suddenly, having worked with professional players where success, as you said, is very binary. It is often measured on, I know when I'm doing well because my ranking moves up. I know when I'm doing well because I'm winning tournaments, I'm beating people I've not beaten before. And that will be the feedback loop that tells me that I'm doing well. But obviously the reality is, in that context, and how I've coached squash, is that helping people understand the small wins, of course, and the changes that you're making, and the attitudes that you're shifting, and the little pieces that are starting to move forward, and like keep celebrating and focusing on those, and then the big ones just come. Here, I'm having to really start again with people trying to explain that reality of process and outcome and how they're so different, and just the concept of growth, like growth mindset. It's almost like, well, what's the point of doing it unless I can win it? Well, you might improve.
Yeah, well, you might improve, but also surely it goes back to what you were describing before about you have to eradicate fear in order to achieve infinite possibility, which means that if we're constantly in a binary where only success is possible and we don't allow any space for micro success, slow generative success, or indeed flatline failure, etc., if we still have those in the derogatory category, someone is not going to be able to achieve what they need to in the world because they have no elasticity in the system to navigate the difficult emotions, surely.
No, absolutely. And of course, the reality is 1% in every environment. Of all the academies that I've created and professionals that I have, and in the environment I have here, it's pretty much 1%, maybe 2% will pop out and get to the top, of the thing, because they're just multiple factors align that allow them the opportunity to go make that happen. And, one of those factors is that, they brought me here and I help cultivate that, but then they have just the right parenting balance. They have the right athletic ability. They're fascinated by the sport. They really struggle at school, whatever. This is their thing. There's all these like pieces that fall into place and then they bubble up to the top. But for the other 99%, okay, probably 20 out of that 100 get pretty good because they're predisposed, but it's not really their thing. They just happen to be good at it. And I've worked with players in the top 20 in the world that fit in that category. They just happen to be really good at the sport because they've been put in the environment from a young age and they've had all the ingredients. So just by default, they've pushed through and they've just got to where they've got. But if I take a step back and go, knowing you as well as I do and being around you for this long, like, what are you really about? In some cases, I'm like, you're actually an artist, you're not a squash player, or you're a whatever, something else. It's incredible how easily we end up getting funneled in certain directions, which, over here, as I said, is sort of wrapped up in the idea of success that, well, if I get good at squash, get me into a boarding school and I'll play on the school team and I'll get recognized and I'll go to Ivy League or, top college. And then once I do that, then I get to the job. So definitive here. So definitive. And having traveled quite a lot as well all over the world and seen it in different areas, yes, definitely high performing areas, of some in the Far East as well. But UK is definitely quite different, I think, with this stuff. It's maybe changing a bit here and there, but there's not anything like the same level of all in purpose towards this pipeline, towards the moment of the high paying salary and the top jobs and all the rest of it. I've got nothing against these things, by the way. Like I'm here partly for that reason, to move my career forward and to, have better financial opportunities, all those things. So it's not that I'm against the binary levels of success. It's more a case, as you say, that if it's viewed that that is the only way and that is the only indicator of development, of progress, of growth, then it's a disaster because yes, that 1% will experience it, but the vast of the others, they're just failing every single day. And that's all I'm working with here. So really what I would add to that is that my definition of success is a healthy, happy individual that is able to maximize their life. And I coach squash. I just use squash as a vessel for that. Like I was good at it because of my environment and all the things I just described. And then I realized that it gave me certain aspects of my character, but I'm not really a squash nerd. Like I don't obsess over it like I used to. It's fine. But I'm good at it. I'm good at coaching it. But what I do love about it is that when you go in that court and it's two people battling away, trying to out navigate each other and find a way through all these multiple problems while feeling physical, mental, and emotional strain, and you put a crowd there and other things there, then you get this compression in the environment, which, if you're able to approach it in the right way, has enormous potential and basically just reflects the broader picture of life. You just in a box instead of in this thing. So that's literally why I do it. And I've had that philosophy since, again, 16, 17 years old when I first started coaching, is how to maximize individuals using this game. And more recently, I've started to broaden out into other sports and then not sport and just people and so on, because it's all the same stuff. But really, sorry to answer your question, I've been going on a bit there, but success, I just think success is so personal and there's multiple levels and types of successes along the way. And I think it's very important to mull over that question for individuals and just start with, well, what are some small successes? Successes, wake up and spend 30 minutes doing something healthy without looking at your phone. Like that's hugely successful. That's awesome. That's progress. Let's have some positive interactions today with people where you're actually present and you listen. Like that's successful. Like forget whether you then go and win the tournament or smash your exams or whatever it is you're doing, in my case with the kids here. But I think it's so important to break the concept of success up. And I believe most importantly, well-being. all said and done, winning, losing, reaching to the top, if it's not well-being and it's not full of joy and love and excitement and great energy, then I'm not okay with it. It's just simple as that. I'm not having it. For my life and with the people I work with, I just give the same message. So I think I really believe now in this present day as well, that's all that matters based on the way the world is. I don't think it's all bad. But I've got 3 kids, 15, 12, and 8. And, we homeschool all of them for some of the reasons we've discussed. I want them to be able to find their way through and navigate the world and just be as best as possible, confident, happy, connected, caring human beings. And then after that, whatever, to be honest. So I kind of guess that sport has shown me both sides. You need to be competitive, you need to be driven, you need to have energy, you need to have purpose, commitment, motivation, all these things to go get what you want. But getting clarity over what that is, I think, is really the defining piece at the beginning of it all.
When I'm listening to you, it almost feels like what you're doing is slightly anarchic.
Yeah, you picked up on that thread. It can be. I mean, I've been known for being alternative as a coach, but I just don't see it as alternative. I just see it as like, I think what's become normal in high performance and in academics and in life, I just don't believe it is normal. And I'm sure, I know you feel the same. It's like we've just been trapped, been tricked into this whole capitalist thing, materialistic thing that you have to just keep going to get something that's over there. And it's not true. And I believe you do have to be a bit anarchic and a bit, sometimes very anarchic and very kind of hard-nosed in the front of that in order to not get sucked into it, but also literally choose not to.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying about the power of belief. I mean,
Yes.
Any of us in this field, we have to believe in the particular philosophy that we feel called to offer into the world. I am the same as you, and I feel like what you're bringing into an environment that I know also from our mutual dear friend, like I know how intensively competitive that environment is. And so to bring in the human and to bring in the connective and to bring in the community, as I witness your stated principles, I'm brought back again and again and again to how important a healthy human environment is for people to thrive and flourish within, whether that's within your family when you're homeschooling, or whether that's within your education system, or whether that's within your career. If we're not prioritizing that, we've really got something wrong.
Definitely. Yeah.
Which is a shame.
It's a total shame. And obviously there's, much bigger picture that and the knock-ons than just how the world operates and so on and so on. But then, then I guess it goes back to purpose, isn't it? Which is why you're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing, all the great people on your podcast as well, that, you obviously feel you have certain experiences, personal experiences that shape your views and your values and the things that matter and the really horrible stuff and the difficult stuff that pushes you in a direction that you realize is much more positive. And then from that, try to make change and try to, I think in many cases, work more. I just think for me, it's just the more I can keep improving me, generally the better everything just becomes anyway, whether it be how I coach, how I interact, but all the way through to literally how the world unfolds in front of me. That's kind of more where I am now, is spending the vast majority of my time in a kind of creative, meditative state in order to change how I experience the world and change how the world unfolds in front of me, rather than, okay, I'm in New York, how am I going to use this place to do these things? And after New York, I want to do this, and then I want to create that, and all these sort of pictures. And yes, all that vision is there, but like that's an intention which is out there. And it's like, right, let's go here and just keep working away, and being persistent in that, driven by all that anarchic, I'm not having it stuff. That's where it comes from for me, is just, I'm not okay with that. I'm going that way. And then, this is obviously the reality is, and then you do this for a period of time, and then you start to feel changes internally, and then you feel them externally, and that's something like, okay, we're onto something here. And then all those patterns relate back to the times when the players have performed better. When Mohammed has won stuff, he's let go of certain things. We did a breathwork session before, and his life outside the court was more balanced. And then female player at work with an amazing player, Joelle King. She was kind of at her wit's end a little bit at the end of her squash career. She'd had an injury. She was top 4 or 5 in the world. She snapped her Achilles, I think, or definitely had a very bad injury. I can't remember the specifics of it. And we happened to kind of get introduced. She's just come back, but she's been out for a year. In the meantime, all these young Egyptian players have come through. The game has changed in some ways. And she felt like she'd sort of, stepped out of the game, so to speak, and the game had changed. And she'd come back and was like, I don't know if I can ever get back in. And then she was losing and she was, so upset. And our first conversation, she basically cried for an hour and a half. And I'd never met her before. Like, okay, do you know what? Why don't we just say, from now on, if you want to work together, we've scrapped the rankings, we scrap all the past, we scrap, well, you've missed out, and what if you don't get here, and the what ifs and whatever. We put all that to one side and we just say, how would you love to play the game before your career is out? What would that look like? What would you dream of? And we'll just lean into that and see where it takes us. And we can kind of shake hands now and said, I'm okay with that if you are. Let's just go all in. And which was relatively unusual for, I'm coaching Mohammed at this point. He's world number one. And, we never met each other, but I said, let's go hit some balls now. And I had like music playing and I had breathing and talking while she's moving. And we just like messed around for about an hour and a half, 2 hours on the court. And all we did was just like, let me show you what it feels like to hit the ball really, really cleanly and just feel amazing when you hit the ball. Let's not care where it goes. Let's not care whether you're going to play a tournament next week. Let's just see if you can really enjoy just this simple process of hitting one shot. But we're going to do that by taking your mind out with some music, and we're going to start breathing. We're going to do different things and just get you into the space so you can at least grasp the idea of what it feels like to do something in basically in a kind of flow state. I can't remember where she was ranked at that point, maybe outside top 20 in the world. Within a few weeks, she'd beaten players in the top 10 and she just went straight up to the top. And as long as we could hold on to that, we don't care whether you win or not. We don't care whether you're moving back in the top 10 or not. We're just putting that out the window and we are committing to experiencing and enjoying and being present and being grateful for the sport that you're managing to be back into. And you're going to play it in this really cool way this time around. You're not just going to be on there sweating and grinding and smashing the ball around. You're going to play it in a way which actually feels authentic and creative, and it's all of you on the court. Of course, the reality, she shot back up to 4 in the world, and then everyone got excited. Oh, she could be number one, she could win, and all the pressure came back, and then she went down again. And so it was a really fascinating journey, but it was such a big example, such a powerful example of that letting go of all the externals, all of the outcomes, with just a complete all in. Well, what have we got to lose? It's not going to work if you do what you were doing before, because the game's different. The Egyptians have come, they're more creative, more attacking. What have we got to lose? Let's just like relax and just try this way. And, fortunately, she was already very good, so it made it easier to do that. But it taught me a huge lesson in believing in that process for me, because I had to believe in that, obviously, and follow it through and be okay with maybe it doesn't work and she thinks I'm a nutter. And just be like, well, I don't care, because this is what I think would be great. And, once that had worked, and obviously then, you get confidence and other people believe in you and you can keep going with that. But it is still very much, I would say, quite rare in sport, and way too much, not even just in sport, in careers, in all walks of life, where people just keep getting sucked back into the idea of success and winning, essentially making it all okay, and that being the holy grail, and missing the point of like, just enjoy what's going to happen right now and have some fun and be a kid again, basically, but one with more experience and and a mind and body that's able to do things at a higher level. But I really believe we have to be quite energy for me is everything. Maybe we can talk about that subject, but like just how you use your energy, where you put it, how you direct it, from the language that you say, your emotions, and what you do with that, and understanding the power of that. But having that huge leverage actually behind the thing, the movement, the step, the breakthrough, the leverage is everything. In case of Joelle, it's like, well, we've got no choice. You're sat here in tears. We're at rock bottom. Let's just give it a go. So that's another maybe thread that we could talk about is just leverage, and how I think that's one of the main reasons why people don't change is because there's not enough leverage. And normally they do change after something really extreme has happened. It's a rock bottom, it's a huge life change, it's something. That's something I spend a lot of time trying to help people with, is finding out where we're gonna get the lever to push you over the line here, break you out of these patterns, and just go no more.
It's that question of how do I make it meaningful for the individual? The way that we're encouraged to think is, okay, we have to give it a negativity bias. So we're going to lean into the brain's natural deviation and we're going to say, okay, I'm going to make it painful for myself not to achieve the thing. And that does work. You know, when you're talking about rock bottoms, of course, that does work. I think the challenge becomes the greater your distance from your rock bottom, the more that the motivation dwindles. Recognizing the human tendency, which is, okay, if I'm using pain, I'm either going to have to keep on reinforcing the reminder of the pain, or I'm going to have to find something that is more emotionally meaningful, which actually cognitively means it's going to be sending itself into my short-term and then long-term memory stores. And it's not going to be hard for me to form the habits that then keep cultivating my success.
Yes.
And the meaning making thing is really interesting relative to what you're describing, because what you're also really cautioning us all, and certainly your athletes, to do is be careful of the automatic meanings that you are giving to these words like success, or to the pitch, or to whatever context it is where you've placed an unbelievable load of pressure on yourself to achieve a certain thing.
Mm.
When you were speaking originally, when I heard you talking about success, I was thinking about the difference between success and satisfaction.
Mm. Mm.
Satisfaction,
Yeah.
he almost has this like delicious, like umami kind of
Mm.
unctuous, deep, fully embodied experience. And I think for people to be willing to slow their thinking and slow their lives and slow their decision making down enough that they can really be feeling for, is this actually satisfying for me? Is it pleasurable for me? Is it meaningful for me? Does it impact my community? Can that be the baseline on which I orient myself in this flow of life, so that I am living actively in the world? I am alive and awake and conscious, and I'm not being lived by either my own mind or a society that has set a particular trajectory that I feel like I'm just churning like a hamster on the wheel.
Mm. Mm.
It's one of the things that makes me think that everyone should have a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everyone here's got a therapist because it's New York, it's America. But, then I think I agree. I think a coach is maybe a better description, to be honest. I think everyone needs a coach slash mentor slash partner, friend, whatever. People, to be honest, a team of people, a great group of people around you that you trust. Of course, with athletes, again, that's huge because you build a team specifically to your needs. But I think maybe outside of sport, that does happen where we end up with a bunch of people around us that I believe we pull towards us, depending on our state. And sometimes we'll reflect on that and realize, actually, do you know what? Like these people in this environment probably isn't actually doing too well for me. And sometimes you can then go, well, I need to change and choose a different environment. But I believe actually, if you can change your internal state first, then those either specific coaches or people will kind of materialize and they'll come forward and they'll come towards you. And I think that's definitely a big part, isn't it? Of we definitely all, and I'm an only child who, kind of grown up, finding my own way, doing my own thing. And it took me a long time to realize that I need not just like my dad when I was growing up, but I need people around me that I can ask questions to that I don't know the answer, and have expertise in things that I don't. and that I'm not good at and I don't like. And they'll tell me the truth. Particularly, they'll tell me the truth. And yeah, I totally agree with you. We do need a coach, but it's the same in sport, but sometimes it's very, very difficult to know the right people and know the right environments. Maybe that goes back to the vision.
Yeah, and I think it's also what you're describing about energy that you have to feel it. One of the topics I wanted to ask you about is resistance. And I feel like in the example of Joelle King, you're describing the fact that in some ways resistance is futile. This is the set of cards as they are currently laid out. And then we get this opportunity, like a springboard, to decide what we're going to do with them. And when I'm working on people's psychological and emotional development, and it's fascinating to me that we do so much of the same thing, but just with different tools.
Mm.
One of the biggest things for them to get used to doing, and it is an active doing, it is not a place you arrive at, is to welcome and allow themselves to inhabit the uncomfortable emotions, the uncomfortable belief statements, the uncomfortable qualities or temperamental leanings within themselves that they have up until this point ostracized, compressed, demonized, externally expressed at other people. So getting someone to come home in this way is the most profound gift a human being, in my opinion, can ever be given, is to embed in them the tools and the understanding and the motivation to do exactly what you're describing, which is I'm going to get really centered and inside of myself so I can understand this internal terrain and not reject any of the bits that arise. Because of course, as soon as we can be in a welcoming space, similarly to the way that you're talking about mentoring someone, as soon as you offer that welcoming space where someone does not have to be in a state of fear, everything within nervous system, psychology, emotionality, physiology just oozes and relaxes into that state. And in that state, they are truly cultivatable. What I find, I work with a lot of people who are high performing in different areas. So either in a corporate context where they're high performing coaches, or they are high performing creatives, actors, actresses, producers. What they all have to be willing to do is actually meet their own pain, envy, anger, resentment, jealousy, be willing to sink into those for the often infinitesimally small amount of time that that emotion actually needs to pass through their body in order for them to be able to release it and move on to the positive place or the positive statement. I see that every single day in the work that I do, and I see the profound change that that makes to literally their careers. I'm curious what your take is on that, particularly in the realm of emotionality, what your athletes or what your mentees need to be able to navigate within themselves.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, when you were talking then, it reminded me of actually a personal experience on that. I've definitely seen it with athletes in different ways, but I had an experience about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, actually playing in a squash event myself. So at that stage, I was 50 years old. I'm playing in a competition which is over 50s, so it's called like a masters event in squash. And I hadn't played a tournament for probably 15 years. I'd just been a coach. And even before that, it was another 5, 10 years that I was playing like proper tournaments as a professional. So my competitive identity and that whole life and that whole way of experiencing things was like far in the past. Apart from if I maybe played a game of table tennis in a bar or something, I'd be like, oh, I'm competitive again, but like not in the same way. So long story short, I end up entering this competition because a bunch of people said, oh, you should play it. It's in England and it's the British Open. So it's sort of the best in the world of that age group, some of the different age groups. And it was nerve-wracking from start to finish on a very extreme level, bearing in mind I'm 52, my career is over. What does this matter? This is just a tournament, but it wasn't. It was a big title in this particular category. When I entered, I got put as the number one seed because I used to play professionally, and some of the other guys hadn't. I got sort of put at the top. Then I took my family with me, so now I've got my kids watching, and it's live streamed. So I know like Mohammed and some of the other players were watching, when they got to the finals. So I knew there was a sort of an audience outside looking in. There's probably 150 or so people watching in the final. And then on the back row, within 3 feet of the glass, I've got my three kids lined up and my wife. And I've never had that. So when I was performing professionally, I was just out in the middle of nowhere playing tournaments, and it would just be the phone calls to my parents, which would be the sort of family stuff. But this was a whole different level. I've never felt so much pressure on an event in my life. And it was because, of course, the repercussions were going to fall on the people that mattered most, which is my kids and my family and my wife. That's the bit that if that rocks, I rock big time. Being a father, whatever. So anyway, I end up one game down, 6-1 down in points, and I've got pain all through one leg. My Achilles is, I can hardly touch it. I can move, but not really. And it's kind of got worse as the games went on, just playing the tournament, and my body's not played for a long time, not used to it. And at 1-11, 6-1 down, I found myself going to the side wall, wiping my hand on the wall, and just feeling all of this pressure and starting to see the reality that I was going to lose. And I was going to have to basically turn around and see probably one of my kids in particular will cry and try to punch my opponent and just be absolutely distraught by the fact that dad didn't win. And I felt that burden even before I started the tournament. Very emotional little boy. And anyway, going back to what you were saying about confronting, is that I wiped my hand on the wall and I said, okay, you've got two choices here. You either continue to resist the reality that you can lose and just suffer for the next period of time until this is over, or you can accept all of this pain. You can accept the fact that you're going to walk off court and this child will cry, probably disappear. The other two will be upset. My wife will be really upset. My parents are watching. All these other people, the ego of the broader community of squash and whatever, that's all looking in and all putting that pressure on. I just told myself, Hadrian, you will take that on board. You will go through that discomfort. You will feel that pain. You will experience the pain of the kids, of the trophy ceremony where you get runner up. You'll make a speech. You'll make no excuses. You'll congratulate your opponent. You will not mention that your Achilles is hurting. You will just be honest and you'll just accept all of it. And that's what's going to happen. And of course, I relaxed a bit. I hit the ball a bit better. My pain subsided slightly. I clawed a few points back. He started to get a bit frustrated. He thought he'd won, and then he suddenly wasn't. Then he got upset. Then he got a warning from the referee. And I just remember looking across at my opponent and going, oh my God, I'm going to win. And this was I still won down and 6-all or 7-all, but I could just see he had just gone, no way, he's coming back. All I'd done is let go and accepted the absolute worst, horrific awfulness that I was going to go through. And for me, that is pretty much as specific as it gets. Embodied it, felt it, accepted it, and I'm going to just confront it, and that's what's going to happen. And it freed me, and I went straight through and won. Maybe the most definitive sporting experience I've ever had, and it's just like two old men playing squash. But it doesn't matter, does it? Because you never change. But I feel like that example is exactly what you're talking about the ability to choose to go towards those pieces with, as you say, an acceptance, a loving kindness to some extent, or definitely a loving kindness, but also a deep understanding of this is the way through. And this feeling and all of these experiences and emotions that go with them, this is the necessary path to get you to all the good stuff. And in that case, for me, it is holding the trophy. And then moving to New York, that first year was just pain. It was just, this place is crazy. What we're doing here, my wife is not happy. My kids don't know what's going on. We don't know how to fit in. The health system's a mess. It's just, what are we doing? I was waking up each day going, I don't even know how I can go do lessons here. I was so struggling so much with the environment, having left home and done all these things. And of course, you pass that test, you go through all those things start to shift. Certain areas got better and bits we were struggling with, kind of like a little bit of a health issue with my wife. I was so worried about it, all these tests and this crazy health system. That kind of got better. And then the sun came out and then bang, we passed the test, and now it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. But another example of that, it's like that process you have to go through, isn't it? Of just staying with it, just staying with the feelings and understanding deeply that if you stay with it, it will lead you to all the good stuff. But if you either talk yourself out of it, distract, diversify, go somewhere else, go on your phone, go hang out with those people because they all got the problems and you can talk about it with them, or whatever the diversion might be, you just stay the same. Which I guess still goes back to leverage and having a coach, as you say. But I think that understanding of that relationship, like a cold shower, I think that sometimes, it's just that feeling intuitively like, well, this is not, I'm obviously going to flinch. But if you change the relationship with the cold and go, this is powering my body with immunity and strength and vitality, and it's so cool. You just say all that stuff. It actually feels really good. It's association, isn't it, with a lot of this stuff.
Well, and of course, what you're describing, even in the shower example, that's also physiologically true.
Yes.
But we trip ourselves by going down the track of the negative emotional rumination, and then we sort of get lost on that because we've reinforced it so many times. We then forget what the reality is. I love that story.
Yeah, it was really interesting, like I said, because it's such a kind of a random event in my life generally, but in my sort of sporting life. But it wasn't until afterwards, and I do exercises every morning. Like they've kind of varied over a period of time, but I spent a long time doing a bunch of exercises where you really lean into moments that you're proud of, moments you're grateful for, and projections for the future. And I've repeated that moment like hundreds of times every day, gone back and gone, you did that, you got through, you did this is what happened, until I just wired my system so consistently with that proud of moment that it's just put that circuit in my mind, which just gives that little bit more resistance to similar things in the future. So I've pulled on that a lot of times, even though in an abstract way, it's like, well, you just won a tournament with a bunch of old people. Like, what's the big deal? But it wasn't that. It was just the fact that for me, it had enough gravity and the repercussions were so unbearable because it was family and friends and so on, that it put me in a state of like, whoa, this is a big one. I'm right on my limit here. Yeah. And then anytime that happens, isn't it? And you find a way through, if you can then pull on that like every day for a while, keep pulling on that moment of you did it in that moment. The person said this and you didn't react. You felt the emotion come, you breathed, you let it go, and you found yourself passing through that moment. Like, yes, 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 yes. Like, just that's such a big thing for me to be able to, which I think humans find so hard to do, is really celebrate, like properly celebrate their moments of success and the moments where they overcome things and where they hit the small wins. Because of course, we're wired for survival, wired for the worst scenarios. And if you celebrate too much, it might go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. And I think, in that story, what you were able to do, I don't want to use a really coachy word, but I'm going to use it. You alchemized. You alchemized the fear into courage by
Yeah.
facing it. So as we face the fear, then we realize there's not actually as much to be afraid of as we thought that there was. We gain that muscularity internally.
Yes.
But what it also makes me think of, and it's relevant to what you're talking about in terms of your mind state in your daily practice. We are so hardwired, not just for negativity, but in the world that's been cultivated around us and that we as human beings have facilitated and continue to develop. We're so oriented towards having an external salve or an external form of validation or an external positive emotion. Please come into me now to make my insides better. What we're really poor at doing is using the biochemistry that we already have. And I often reflect on that and I wonder to myself, I wonder what it is that makes it feel harder for XYZ person to give themselves the thing that they are desperately in a thirsty quality seeking from someone outside of them. I also ask myself the same question when I'm doing the same thing. And one of the factors is the willingness to make an effort.
Yes, definitely.
If you look at that thing that you were talking about in terms of leverage, that vision that all of your 1 percentile athletes have, because the leverage is so strong and because the vision is so strong, what they're also really willing to do is make the effort.
Mm,
They're willing to take a gamble on themselves because it doesn't feel like such a gamble because they kind of believe that they've already got it in the bag on
true.
some level. But where people are shaky about their ability or they're shaky and they don't trust themselves, you know, that story that you're describing talks a
Mm,
lot about building self-trust. And I love that you're doing it at the age of 52.
mm,
It's a reminder to me that we're never done. There really is nowhere to get to in self-development. There's just
no,
more and richer and deeper and curious and pivot, pivot, pivot.
definitely.
But I'd love just maybe as a final sort of takeaway from you, because this has been such an incredible conversation. I'm personally very delighted that you're here.
No, I'm loving it. Thanks again.
No, good, not at all. But I would love to hear your take on making an effort,
Mm,
not efforting at life in a way that's strained and is oriented towards other people's expectations, but can I actually try at
mm.
something? And you were talking about growth mindset before. Can I try at something and then work over time incrementally to create it? What is your perspective on that whole thing?
It's a great question. I'd say that's really the tipping point when I'm working with anybody, whether it be an athlete, whether it be, you know, an individual that's just mentally and spiritually, emotionally in a really bad place, or a child that wants to try and get into an Ivy League, whatever the situation is, it's all the same, of course, that they're all facing the same kind of blocks. As you're saying there, it's make an effort, it's that action. What is it that stops them taking the action? And there are times when I'll be working with an individual, and it could take 5 sessions, maybe less, it depends, but like could be 5 sessions to get the narrative and the loops of energy and leverage, I guess, like the different ways that I will help them pull on different things. And then I'll just see them go, yeah, it's done. I'm doing it. And there are other times, I'll give you an example. There's a young girl that I will work with in America, and she's 16. I was brought in to talk to her because she got so upset at tournaments. She was just falling apart, and her mum was a good player and really wanted her to do well and so on. So, long story short, we haven't talked about squash to this day because we just haven't got to that point. She was so far from that even being relevant, really not a good way mentally. And in order to get her to make an effort and to push through and to change, basically, the only way I could do it eventually, because I could see that she could understand the concepts of what I was saying, and I gave her, you know, the basics of the brain science, of the stories and the successes and whatever. And you know conceptually that people can understand. Yeah, I get that, but in my gut, I don't either believe or I just can't see myself literally taking the step. I can't see myself coming out of this conversation or shutting this laptop and then going and immediately making some change in that direction, because I just can't not do it. I have to do it now. That's the only way it's going to happen. So with this individual, it was basically a hack where I said, okay, I need you to wake up. There's a 16-year-old girl, wake up, phone, TikTok, cappuccino, bus, school. She thought, you know, people didn't like her. She's got bad relationships everywhere. She's all over the place, getting her own crowd, like different medications, bunch of different whatever things that doctors have said, therapists. It's like, wow, we have to intercept this. We have to intercept it at the first moment of the beginning of each day for a long enough period that you can feel a change. And then we can start to make some progress. So I basically said, right, I need you to wake up, and I know your phone cannot be in the room. I need you to buy an alarm clock now. So I kind of made her mum do that. Buy an alarm clock, and you put your phone in a different space. And then when the alarm goes off, if you want to have a shower, fine, that's okay. But you're then going to sit down, you're going to shut your eyes, you're going to go through these breathing techniques, and you're going to repeat these processes exactly as I tell you. And you're going to do this for 7 days in a row. And she's like, yeah, I'll try and do that. Yeah, hopefully I can do that. So like, I know you're not going to do it. I said, but if you don't do it, I'm going to do 100 press ups for every day you don't do it. Because I could see she's a sweet, caring little individual that's basically just a very creative, emotional, highly sensitive, basically child that's in a really difficult world at a high performing school and blah, 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 that just feels everything. And these are most of the time, these are the people that superhumans when you can unlock it. But unfortunately, these experiences just knock them left, right, and center. So I'm like, we have to rewire you. You have to shift. You have to change these patterns. And that's the deal. She's like, no way am I doing that. Like, I don't want to make you do 100 press-ups. I'm like, I'm afraid that's the deal. Like, I'm going to do it and I'm going to know because I'll ask you and your mom's going to tell me. So I just held her a ransom. So she was so concerned about making this old man do press-ups, on one of these days. Of course, she didn't miss a day. Got to day 5. Her mum said, I don't know what you've done here, but she is completely different. She is like not fucking back anymore. She's just generally got different energy, and this has changed and that has changed. And kind of by the time she got to day 7, she shifted, and we kept that going. It's been a few bumps along the ride, but kind of the point of the story is that to take that action, you do need leverage. You're probably going to have to, in some ways, trick yourself a bit into making that happen. I believe you do need some pain, but not pure pain, because then that can just end up into like, oh my God, it's so painful. I'm actually just going to go to the pub. You need some pain, but then a huge amount of pleasure. And you need to leverage those two. So, the pain in that case is, I don't want to make that guy do press ups because that's just brutal and it's embarrassing. And I don't want him to have to do that. And the pleasure is, actually, if I do manage a 7-day streak, I'll be pretty proud of myself. And of course, along the way, she's like, I'm starting to feel a bit better, a bit clearer. And that was all it was. It's like, don't look at TikTok when you wake up. Don't think bad thoughts all through the day. Only say positive things all day, every single day. If you feel a bit upset about something, take a breath, breathe smoothly, and just repeat this until I tell you to stop. And I don't want you to think about anything else. You don't have to worry about anything else. You just do this. And then you get that bit where you get over the line. She's like, whoa, this is better. And then kind of like, I don't really want to go back to that ever because that was dark. And I've realized now actually I can be this version. And if you can get through that wall and then stay there, and then as long as you can nurture that and keep it going, then it's like you sort of break free of the things that are holding you, don't you? And then you can kind of kick on from there. But that first period, like you'd say, it's so painful because the ego and the mind is just going to resist and resist and resist. And something I understood a lot more recently, which is really fascinating, is we get addicted to these negative emotions. You actually get addicted to them, you crave them. And once I heard that, I was like, wow, I can see all these moments, all these behaviors of people really leaning into something which is just destroying them because that emotion is so much more powerful than the alternative.
Yeah, it's Hadrian, it's such a great point. It's the familiarity of the emotion. Emotions are very tied to the identity structure that we've had. So if I've come to believe that I am this thing,
Yeah,
me doing XYZ action, which is in contrast and conflict with this identity that currently keeps me within a space of belonging within my family, but also keeps me knowing where are the walls, how do I navigate the world? You're offering someone the opportunity of completely cultivating a different way of being. That's what we do. We take someone
yeah,
from one way of being to another way of being. Neither of them are objectively true.
yeah. Good point. Yeah,
I would
yeah,
argue that the latter one, hopefully, if we're the kind of coaches that you and I are, is more and more incrementally true because it becomes effortless. But when you're telling me that story, bless her, the old reality wasn't fact. But of course, if we stay living in it, living in the skin of it, we will continue to believe that it is. And then, as you say, we lean towards all of the things and all of the stimuli that reinforce both the baseline belief, but also the negative emotions. So
definitely, definitely. Mm,
I love what you're doing. I love what you're describing, the impact that you're having in this particular field, and I can feel it much, much more widely than that, increasingly in the next couple of years.
mm.
I'm wondering if I could nudge you toward a parting message. I'm sort of particularly attentive to the fact that right now your life is very much surrounded by the youngins.
Mm.
And I guess I'm wondering if there's a parting mantra that you would want to leave them with, if this was their one takeaway statement or belief for today, what would it be? What comes through?
My first thing that came to mind is love yourself and just be kind to other people. I mean, it's a cliche, but I feel that right now that's more prolific than it's ever been. That the dialogue between young people, particularly, has become one of a kind of a banter and a just sort of a tussle, maybe a bit more but with boys, but there's a different narrative, and I believe some of it is fueled by social media as well. Of this is how I am supposed, as an individual, as a young person, this is how I'm supposed to interact with other young people. Is this sort of banter, as I said, this back and forward, this sort of put down thing. And I see it prolifically in sport. I see it prolifically in the community of young people that I work in here, but I see it everywhere else as well. And yeah, I believe the antidote to that is, first of all, just talk to other people how you would want to talk to yourself, but just be kind. It's just simple. It sounds so cliched, like you say. It's not something maybe that's talked about that much with young people as well. Actually, I feel like in the adult community and Instagram and in your kind of worlds, it's becoming more and more prolific, and it's amazing. And it's just something which is necessary to improve people's lives and improve change. But definitely my experiences when I'm moving into sort of teenagers and younger, that this like loving kindness and the license to do that and the power of that and the implications of that and then what that brings towards you is just so, so important. And then you're set, really, aren't you, for life? And then you know who you are, then you'll become an authentic human being. You're laughing, it doesn't matter after that. You know who you are. It's coming from here, and here. And then no matter how crazy the world is, you can find a way through. But I think, so much of what you're doing, what I'm doing, all these great people on your podcast is I feel like a lot of it is about getting people to a point where they're like getting to there that they can go, oh, okay, right, I can kind of see this now. And I think that's, in my experience, maybe a little bit trickier when people are younger because you're not maybe as developed, you don't have as much experience. But if you can pick that up young and breathe, I would say just breathe whenever you get a chance. Breathe smoothly, breathe in the morning, breathe at night. Simplest thing. I do it with every single player I coach, every single camp I do. That's actually really fascinating. Every camp that I do with young people that have never done it before, this is squash camps, they're requesting doing breathing the next day, every single day, having never heard of it and thought it was just weird. Intuitively, they pick it up so quickly and they know so viscerally that, like, God, that made me feel so good. Why is it not talked about everywhere? Like loads of breathwork camps for adults, isn't there? Why are the kids doing this? That's something I want to do, but it's another story.
We can talk about that at a future date.
Yeah, definitely.
I get the same thing and they have the same effect. I do a lot of guided meditations with my clients and in my trainings. And when someone has had one, especially if they've had a personalized one that's gone into some of the things that they've been exploring, it's because both of them create space.
Mm.
It breaks above, as you
Yes. Yeah. It's clarity.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the first step.
Hadrian, this has been so rich and juicy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you again. It's really nice to talk not just about sport and be in a different world. And yeah, well done to you for everything you've done. It seemed ages ago that we were like chatting in Bristol and Pilates world, and now suddenly
Yeah.
you're there, I'm here, and here we are. But it's great. What a great marker.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
you wake up and you realize that your life is here. Hadrian and I met probably about 8 years, 7, 8 years ago now. He very generously brought me in to support some of his athletes on a physiological level. And yeah, since then we've both done some light year quantum
Yeah.
traveling.
Well, yeah. Oh my God, we didn't touch on that subject, but yeah.
But we can. We'll
That's
get,
all I do right now.
yeah.
Quantum meditations. Yeah.
Listeners, sweet things, I want you to just take away that parting message. Love yourself and be kind to others. And if that's the only thing that you take from our conversation, I'm really going to trust that it is inherently enough, as are you. We love you very much. We will catch you for another episode soon.